This is me, my first week in Australia. No job, no network, no family money. I didn't even know how the property market actually worked. I just knew I had to make this work somehow. Fast forward 14 years, I've built $18 million property portfolio. And I did it on a single income while working full-time, making a shit ton of mistakes, and starting later than I should have. Now, I didn't time the market. I didn't flip houses. I didn't win the lottery. I just kept showing up, learning the game and taking small steps, but strategic steps, even when I felt like I didn't belong in the room. If you have ever felt like property is out of reach, that you are too late, you are underpaid, or you're not sure, I want to show you today what's possible. Today, I'm going to break this down into 3 parts. The exact timeline of how I built a property portfolio for the first time, the critical lessons that changed everything, and why none of this matters if you don't understand what you are really building towards. Let's start at the very, very beginning. Now, this is the timeline of my property journey. When I first arrived in Australia, I was that classic story that you hear about, that young guy from South Asia, came here to study, living on instant noodles and hope. I was working 3 jobs just to survive. Working at a BP petrol station, as a security guard, and somehow talked my way into an accounting firm. But let me walk you through exactly how this portfolio came about. Now, the property one was 2008, and it was a disaster. I had $30,000 saved up from those 3 jobs, took everything out of me to save that money. And like most eager young investors, I jumped right into the first deal that I could afford. A unit in tiny Victoria, mind you. On a paper, it looked decent, it looked great. I fixed the interest rate at 8.5% right before the GFC hit. And the rates dropped everywhere. Such a silly mistake to make. The rent was like $190 per week. I was nearly out of pocket by $1,200 every month. That's like more than the money I was making from just one of my jobs. And adding insult to the injury, I couldn't even sell it. The loan was fixed for 5 years, and breaking it would meant I would have paid a $30,000 penalty that I just didn't have. And so I sat with it month after month, watching the money just disappear. Thankfully, that didn't discourage me. It only motivated me to go back in 2009 and made my second purchase. This was a house in Williams Landing that I bought with my family. It was technically my second purchase, but it didn't feel like it was my deal. It was more like a family deal. We did make a small profit when we sold it, but I definitely let it go way too soon. The guy who bought it after me flipped it for a huge gain the very next year. And after that, I decided to try something completely different. I bought a land in Truganina and built a house on it, and it was one of my first experience on creating value through construction and development rather than just buying existing stock. It showed me that property wasn't only about waiting for the market. You could take control and create something of your own. Now, not long after, I had to make one of the hardest but the most important decision of my life. I sold my Williams Landing property to help fund my parents' visa to bring them back to Australia. That decision cost me in terms of pure investment returns, but it gave me something far, far greater, the chance to have my family close by and live in alignment with my values. That was when I truly realized property wasn't just about money. It was about freedom, responsibility, and lifestyle choices, and property gave me all of that. I did have to wait a few years to build up the courage to do it again, but thankfully I did, because the purchase I made in 2014 was when everything shifted for me. By 2013, 2014, I was still experimenting and honestly, still making a lot of mistakes. I dipped my toes into NRES properties, what's now similarly called NDIS model, as well as defense housing, Australia homes or DHA homes commonly known as. On paper, they all looked very attractive, with promising high yields and government-backed securities. I even bought an apartment in Westmead that I sold very quickly. I won the lucky draw in the DHA home, mind you, but I soon realized that they were all poor investment decisions. The Westmead apartment, overpriced and underperformed. The DHA property was essentially the same story, inflated price, dressed up with lure of guaranteed 10% yield, which I now know doesn't work. What I learned was chasing shiny schemes or incentives can blind you from the fundamental investing. That's why when the opportunity for Crow's Nest came in 2014, I knew I had to do things differently. I bought it for $750,000, by far the biggest stretch I've ever made. But that was very, very intentional. I was done chasing bargain, bin chip properties, so-called guaranteed returns. I sold off every underperforming assets, cleared out the dead weight, and focused on buying better quality assets fundamentally. And it served me really, really well. That property is now worth close to about $1.2 million. And then in 2015, I discovered development. That was a game changer. That is where everything pivoted for me. I found a site in Reservoir in Melbourne for $680,000. And honestly, it wasn't a grand scheme or a grand strategy at first. You know, the block was big, the price was decent, and I knew I had to start thinking differently. I kept the house at the front and built 2 at the back. The build cost was roughly around $600,000. When it was all done and sold, I cleared $740,000 net profit. That was my first taste on manufacturing pure equity instead of just playing the weight game. And I wasn't just hoping for growth anymore, I was actually creating it. So in 2017, we bought what would become our family home. I bought what I described as a dumping toner for $525,000. I spent nearly $40,000 renovating it with an intent of actually flipping it or making it an investment property. When it was done, my wife walked through the front door and said, "We are not selling this. We are moving into this property." And that's where we stayed for years. By 2019, I was ready for bigger developments. That's where I increased my risk appetite based on my strategy to take more risk. Diamond Creek was one of the ambitious ones, a 400,000 square meter land where I planned to build 14 townhouses. What I didn't anticipate was the community pushback, the council delays, and it took nearly a year and a half just to get the approval. And we ended up scaling back to 8 homes. The project costed about $4.8 million all up, but I still walked away with over $2 million in net profit. 2020 took me to Adelaide. Christie's Beach is where I bought a 5-unit development site for around $550,000. We completed the build. We sold the entire project for about $3.5 million, netting about $530,000. This deal reminded me that opportunities exist in other markets as well. You just need to know how to extract them. Renella came in next in 2021, a smaller site, but still very solid. We built 3 dwellings there. I'm holding on to these assets for now, but they're valued at about $2.5 million. More than $400,000 in equity uplift. 2023 is when I shifted focus more towards the cash flow properties. After a decade of growth first thinking, I built my first co-living property in Morwell, Victoria. It was a 9-bedroom, 9-bathroom setup with each room having its own ensuite and kitchenette. The land itself costed about $200,000. The bill came about $800,000 and a total investment of roughly about $1 million. The success of Morwell gave me the confidence to expand the model further. Not long after, I completed another co-living project in Mount Gravatt, Queensland, which followed a very similar structure and reinforced how powerful cash flow focused strategies can be. And finally, 2024, it came time to upgrade my family home. We found a property in Williams Landing that almost exactly matched the home we had been planning to build. The same layout, the same finishes, the same design, but it was already done. I didn't have to go out there and build it. Listed for about $1.3 million, but because the seller needed a longer settlement, we negotiated down to $1.1 million. We bought it using equity from previous projects and it felt like life had come to a full circle. So that's where the timeline of 14 properties and developments across 16 years, building from that first disastrous $30,000 investment to an $18 million property portfolio comes about. Let's talk about the lessons. Now, those numbers tell you what happened, but what they don't tell you is why most of it didn't happen at all. So let me share the lessons that changed everything for me. Lesson 1. One bad deal does not define your future. At 22, I was watching $1,200 disappear from my account every month from that tiny unit. My mates were buying cars, going on holidays, living their lives, and I was feeling trapped. Literally trapped for a 5-year fixed loan that I couldn't escape. I remember, lying awake at night, doing the maths over and over, hoping somehow that the numbers would change, but they never did. But here is what I learned, that feeling of being frozen, locked in by one decision, that's not permanent. What you do next is what matters. I could have let that one mistake convince me that property wasn't for me. And a lot of people do that. Instead, I used it as an expensive education experience. Lesson 2, playing defense will keep you poor guaranteed. For years after turning, I was playing scared. When bought and sold Williams Landing house with my family, I was focused on not losing again, that I didn't let myself win properly. We made a small profit and I was relieved to get out, at least, unscathed. But it stung when I found out that the guy who bought the property made a massive gain, close to about 300,000, just literally in the next year. That stung, but it taught me something very valuable and important. The biggest bursts of growth often happens just after it feels too risky to hold on to. That discomfort, that impulse to sell or wait, that's exactly when you need to stay steady. Lesson 3, you can't scale what you don't control. The reservoir development was my light bulb moment. I wasn't just waiting for the growth to happen anymore, I was actually creating it. And that's a very important lesson. Lesson 4, cash flow changes everything for everyone. By 2023, I'd built significant equity, but I was still trading time for money in my day job. The Mount Gravatt co-living property changed that equation completely, including Morwell property. That's when the first 3,000 weekly rent hit my account and something shifted. It wasn't just about money, it was about options. Suddenly, I could make decisions based on what was right for the family and not just what paid the bills. Now, what you're really building is you're building the mission. Here is what I want you to understand. This was never about accumulating assets for the sake of it. Every decision I made, from rent vesting to reinvesting, was to build a life that made room for people who mattered most. When I sold my property to bring my parents to Australia, that $110,000 cost to immigration wasn't about ROI. That was all about honor, the responsibility, and doing the right thing. When we outgrew our Altona home, when our third child came on the way, and my parents living with us, finding that property or upgrading that property wasn't just a lifestyle upgrade. It was the proof that Journey has delivered exactly what we needed, right when we needed it. And that is what property can do for you. Because property became that vehicle that gave me choices. The choices to work because I want to, not because I have to. The choice to say yes to the opportunities that align with my values. The choice to build a home where my kids can grow with space to play and my parents can age with dignity. That's what wealth really, really is. It's not about a number in your property portfolio or freedom to live according to your values without compromise. It's all about the values and the upbringing and the freedom that truly helps you retire. This journey taught me something really profound. The biggest barriers to building wealth through property is in market conditions or interest rates or even money. It's knowledge. It's knowing what's possible, having someone show you how to get there. That's exactly why I started Investor Partner Group or Help Me Buy Brad. Because I remembered what it felt like to be that young guy with $30,000 making super expensive mistakes because I didn't know what I didn't know at that time. Now, I've helped hundreds and thousands of people navigate their property journey, and I feel super humbled and proud about it. And all of these, from first-home buyers, first-time investors to experienced investors looking to scale. Your first deal might be your worst deal, and mine certainly was too. I'm not prone to it. But your next one doesn't have to be. If you're ready to stop hoping and start building, you want someone in your corner who's actually walked the path. Now, if you're ready to stop hoping and start building, and you want someone in your corner who's actually walked this path, I've left a free link, a free consultation in the bio below. Thanks for watching the video today. Thank you for listening to my story. This is Moss checking out. Adios.